She told me on a Wednesday. We were sitting on the back porch after dinner, the sun dipping below the fence line, the neighbor's dog barking at nothing. Melissa had a glass of white wine in her hand, swirling it slowly, her eyes on the horizon. "You know," she said, "I've realized marriage doesn't mean I have to give up being who I want to be." I looked at her. "What does that mean?" She sipped her wine, lips barely touching the glass. "It means you're not the center of my life. You're part of it. But I still have my career, my friends, my goals. I'm not built to revolve around someone else." I let the silence stretch. Crickets buzzed in the yard. Finally, I said, "I thought marriage was about making each other the priority." Melissa's eyes flicked to me, then back to the fading light. "That's outdated. I need more than that." I didn't answer. She drained the rest of her wine and stood up. "Don't take it the wrong way. I'm just being honest." She went inside, leaving me with the sound of the empty chair creaking in the breeze. That was the first clear sign. But the truth is, the cracks had started months earlier. Melissa had always been ambitious, but recently it was different. She joined a new gym, started buying expensive clothes she never wore around me, spent hours scrolling on her phone, smiling at messages and tilting the screen away when I walked past. She came home late from networking events, left early for training sessions, and carried herself like she was constantly waiting for something exciting to happen. And me? I was 41, working as a logistics coordinator for a freight company. My days were long, filled with deadlines, shipping schedules, trucks breaking down, clients complaining. Melissa was 38, an account manager at a marketing firm. Together we had a comfortable house in the suburbs, 2 cars, some savings, nothing spectacular. I thought we were stable, ordinary. That used to be enough. After her porch speech, I went back to my routine like nothing had shifted. But in my head, something started turning. She thought she was just clarifying, setting boundaries. But what she really did was wake me up. The next morning, I went through our bills while she showered. I noticed things I'd never paid attention to before. Boutique charges, spa visits, rideshare receipts at odd hours. It wasn't the money itself. It was the pattern. Melissa was living a second life with my help. At work, my coworker and friend Nate dropped by my office. "You look like hell, man. Everything okay?" "Fine," I said automatically. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "No, really. You've got that face like someone just stepped on your throat." I forced a smile. "Just thinking too much." Nate studied me but didn't push. He was one of those rare guys who knew when to back off. Still, when I went to lunch later and sat in my truck, I couldn't stop replaying Melissa's words in my head. Not the center. Not the priority. That afternoon, I made my first call. Insurance. I told the agent I wanted to update my beneficiary. She asked who the new recipient would be. I gave my younger brother Daniel's name. "And removing your wife?" she asked. "That's right." Second call was to the bank. I opened a personal account, separate from our joint checking. I didn't move everything, just enough to give me control. Melissa never looked at statements anyway. The third call was to a lawyer's office. I didn't schedule an appointment yet. Just asked some questions, gathered information. That night, Melissa was on the couch when I came home. She had 2 of her coworkers over, laughing too loudly, glasses of wine scattered across the coffee table. The conversation stopped when I walked in. "Evening," I said. "Hey, Chris," one of them, Laura I think, smiled in that mocking way. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and headed upstairs. Halfway up, I heard Melissa's friend whisper, not as quietly as she thought, "He's so clueless." "Honestly, it's better this way." Melissa's laugh followed, sharper than the others. I froze at the top step, that sound echoing. Then I went into the spare room I called my office and sat down. For the first time in years, I opened a notebook and began writing everything down. Dates, times, behaviors. It felt mechanical at first, but soon it became a habit. Over the next 2 weeks, I turned into a ghost in my own house. Not angry, not confrontational, just absent. When Melissa talked about her day, I nodded but didn't follow up. When she asked if I was coming to her firm's dinner party, I shook my head. "You're not going?" she asked. "You said marriage isn't your priority," I told her. "I figured your husband showing up wouldn't matter." Her eyes narrowed. "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" She didn't have an answer. Finally, she muttered, "You're being ridiculous." No, I said calmly. I'm just listening. She didn't like that. 3 weeks later, I came home early from work. A silver Lexus sat in our driveway. I didn't recognize it. Melissa's car was parked next to it. I walked up quietly, unlocked the front door, and heard laughter from the living room. A man's voice. Hers too, higher than usual, playful. I stepped inside. Melissa jumped when she saw me. Sitting next to her on the couch was a man in fitted athletic gear, maybe mid-30s, handsome in that polished way. His arm was stretched casually along the back of the couch, close to her shoulder. "Chris," Melissa said quickly. "This is Jordan." "He's my, fitness consultant." Jordan stood and extended his hand, all charm and confidence. "Nice to meet you, man. Melissa's been killing it in our sessions." I didn't shake. I just looked at him. "Fitness consultant? And you make house calls?" "Part of the premium package," Melissa said too quickly. "Of course it is," I muttered. Jordan's smile faltered. "I should head out." "Good idea." He grabbed his bag. "See you Thursday, Melissa." I followed him with my eyes until the door closed. Melissa turned on me instantly. "That was rude." "Was it?" I opened the fridge, pulled out leftovers. "How long has this been going on?" She crossed her arms. "It's none of your business." "None of my business," I repeated, spooning cold chicken into my mouth. "You're twisting everything," she snapped. "No," I said. "I'm paying attention." Her face tightened. She stormed upstairs and slammed the bedroom door. I sat at the kitchen table, chewing cold food, thinking about Jordan's Lexus parked in my driveway. The next day, Melissa acted like nothing happened. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving for work. I let her. That afternoon, I called Nate. "You still know your cousin who works hotel security downtown?" "Yeah, why?" "I might need a favor soon." "You in some kind of trouble?" "Not me," I said. "But I need to know if my wife checks into any hotels in the city." Nate whistled. "Shit, okay, give me her name." 2 days later, he called back. "Your hunch was right. She checked into the Riverside Hotel Monday. Room for 2. Guest listed as Jordan Miller." I sat there at my desk, staring at the wall while the hum of the office surrounded me. I wanted to storm into that hotel. I wanted to drag them both out by their hair. But that's the script. That's what every betrayed husband does. Rage, violence, humiliation. And then somehow the cheater comes out looking like the victim. I wasn't following the script. That weekend, Melissa told me she had a conference. She'd be gone until Sunday evening. "Okay," I said evenly. She blinked. "That's all? No questions?" "I trust you," I lied. She studied me for a moment, searching my face, then shrugged and went upstairs to pack. The moment her car disappeared down the street, I got into mine and followed. Not close enough to be obvious. Just close enough. Sure enough, she drove straight into the city, straight to the Riverside Hotel, straight into Jordan's waiting arms. I parked across the street and watched as they checked in, laughing like newlyweds. She leaned her head on his shoulder. He carried her bag like it was natural. I sat there until the valet waved me along, then pulled into a coffee shop lot and thought. It wasn't pain I felt anymore. It was something colder, focused. When I got home, I opened my notebook and started cataloging. Hotel, date, time, companion. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I was going to build something stronger than anger. I was going to build a case. The next morning, I drove to my brother Daniel's house. He was outside mowing the lawn, sweat running down his face. "Chris," he said, surprised. "What's up?" I leaned on the fence. "I need your help." "But you can't say a word to Melissa." Daniel turned off the mower, wiping his forehead with his sleeve. "What kind of help?" "The kind where you cover for me. Financial stuff. If anyone asks why I changed my life insurance beneficiary to you, just say I wanted to make sure your kids were secure." He frowned. "This about her?" "Yes." He didn't push further. Just nodded. "You got it." That night, Melissa came home from her conference, glowing, humming to herself as she unpacked. I sat on the couch pretending to watch TV. "How was it?" I asked. "Great," she said, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Productive. I met some really interesting people." "I bet you did." She paused, like she'd heard something in my tone. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said, eyes on the screen. She studied me for a moment, then shook her head. "You're acting strange." "Maybe I'm just listening." Her smile faded. She went upstairs without another word. As her footsteps disappeared, I opened my notebook again, dated the page, and wrote, "She thinks she's winning. She has no idea." Melissa started spending more nights out after that weekend. At first it was company dinners, then late client calls, and finally, the vaguest of all, networking events. Each excuse delivered like she'd rehearsed it. Her confidence grew as mine seemed to fade, and that's exactly what I wanted her to think. I kept playing the part of the distracted husband. I ate dinner alone, nodded when she said she'd be late, even asked a casual, "Have fun," like I wasn't keeping track of every detail. In reality, my notebook was filling with dates, receipts, times, and names. Tuesday night, she claimed she had an after-hours strategy meeting. She left at 6:30 wearing heels and perfume she hadn't touched in months. I waited 15 minutes, then called Nate. "Need eyes downtown again," I told him. "You got it. Give me half an hour." An hour later, Nate texted me a photo. Melissa and Jordan sitting side by side in a booth at a trendy tapas bar, a half-empty bottle of wine between them. Jordan's hand was on her thigh. The camera angle wasn't perfect. It was taken through a window, but it was more than enough. I saved the photo, added it to my growing collection. The next morning, Melissa acted tired, sipping coffee at the counter while scrolling her phone. "Long night," she sighed. "I bet," I said. She glanced at me but didn't push. I realized then that she wasn't just careless. She wanted me blind. She wanted me so far removed that she didn't even have to bother with her lies anymore. That worked for me. On Thursday, I had my first full appointment with the lawyer, Karen Mitchell. I brought the notebook, the receipts, the photos. She spread them across her desk, adjusting her glasses. "You've built a strong record already," she said. "Most clients come in here with nothing but suspicion. You've got hard evidence. What's the next step?" "Depends what you want," Karen said. "You want out clean? We can file for separation now. But if you want leverage, financially or otherwise, you need more. Document her using joint funds for this affair. Track her patterns. Catch her in lies. Build a wall around your assets while she thinks you're asleep." I nodded slowly. "I want leverage." Karen leaned back. "Then you're playing the long game. That means patience. No confrontations. No slip-ups. Just keep gathering." I left her office with a new kind of energy, not rage, not heartbreak, strategy. That Friday, Melissa had another conference. She left in the afternoon with an overnight bag. I gave her a kiss on the cheek and wished her good luck, smiling like a fool. She smiled back, relieved, thinking I was finally back in her pocket. But this time I didn't just follow. I prepared. I parked across from the riverside again and watched her check in with Jordan. I snapped photos as they walked into the lobby, arms brushing, her head tilted toward him like he was the funniest man alive. Once they were inside, I got out of my truck and walked a block down to a camera shop. Bought a small telephoto lens for my phone and an audio recorder. Nothing illegal. I wasn't about to bug her room, but useful tools. The next morning, I positioned myself at a cafe across from the hotel entrance. Around 10, they came out. Melissa in a sundress I hadn't seen before, Jordan in expensive sneakers. They held hands openly, no hesitation. They went to brunch, browsed boutique shops, even kissed in broad daylight outside a bookstore. I documented everything. Photos, timestamps, receipts when I could grab them. At one point, Jordan parked his car outside a gallery, and I walked past just close enough to catch part of their conversation. Melissa laughed softly. "Chris doesn't even notice anymore. He thinks I'm buried in work." Jordan smirked. "Good, then we've got nothing to worry about." I kept walking, heart pounding. That sentence alone was worth gold. By Sunday night, Melissa came home exhausted again. She tossed her bag on the floor, stretched, and said, "I need a bubble bath." It was nonstop. I forced a smile. "You deserve it." As she disappeared upstairs, I pulled her bag closer. Inside were receipts, room service for 2, cocktails, breakfast in bed. I photographed each one before putting them back. Monday morning, I slid the photos and notes into a folder and locked it in my desk at work. Out of sight, out of reach. By now, I had enough to destroy her socially and financially. But Karen's words echoed in my head. Leverage. That week, I started shifting money. Quietly, carefully. I rerouted part of my direct deposit into the personal account. I canceled one of our joint credit cards under the excuse of fraud suspicion. Melissa never noticed. She assumed the bank handled everything. Meanwhile, I kept up appearances at home. I cooked dinner twice that week, poured her a glass of wine, asked about her clients. She smiled, relieved, convinced the storm had passed. On Thursday, I tried something new. "You should take a girls' trip," I suggested casually over dinner. Melissa raised an eyebrow. "Girls' trip? Yeah, you've been working hard. You deserve it. Take Laura, take your sister. A weekend away. My treat." She blinked, caught off guard, then smiled slowly. "That's actually a good idea. Think about it," I said, pretending to focus on my plate. I wasn't offering generosity. I was offering rope. The next few days I dug into Jordan. A friend of Nate's worked at a gym downtown and confirmed what I suspected. Jordan wasn't as successful as he looked. He'd been bouncing between gyms, living off high-paying private clients, constantly chasing the next big opportunity. Word was he'd lost a pile of money on crypto last year. He needed Melissa more than she needed him. That gave me an idea. I searched Jordan's name on social media. His profile was full of gym selfies, motivational quotes, and the occasional expensive dinner photo. But in the background of several posts, there was a woman. Blonde, athletic, smiling. Her name was tagged Rachel Adams. Rachel's profile was public too. From the pictures, it was clear. Rachel was Jordan's girlfriend. 2 years together, countless photos of vacations, birthdays, cozy nights in. She had no idea what he was doing with my wife. I spent an entire night scrolling through her posts, piecing together their timeline. Jordan wasn't just cheating with Melissa. He was living 2 lives, same as her. By Friday, Melissa announced she had another overnight work retreat. I nodded. Of course. That night, I drafted an anonymous email to Rachel. "Hi, Rachel. You don't know me, but I know your boyfriend, Jordan. I think you should know that he's been spending weekends at the Riverside Hotel with a married woman named Melissa Wright. I can provide dates, photos, and receipts if you want them. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you. I didn't send it, not yet. Timing mattered. Instead, I kept watching. Saturday morning, I followed Melissa and Jordan again. Same pattern, breakfast, shopping, holding hands. But this time, I trailed them to a gym. Jordan introduced her around like she was his partner. She laughed, tossed her hair, acted like she belonged. I took photos of them leaving together, his hand on her lower back. That night, I sat in my truck and looked at the folder of evidence. It was thick now, overflowing. When Melissa came home Sunday evening, she looked radiant, glowing in a way she hadn't in years. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I'd eaten. I said I had. She smiled and went upstairs humming. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, her voice drifting down the stairs, and thought about the moment when her world would collapse. It wasn't anger anymore. It was inevitability. He waited until the week after Melissa's birthday. It felt right. She'd posted pictures, tagged friends, basked in the small lights of public approval, and she'd let her guard down. She was high on other people's praise, convinced that she had everything running exactly the way she wanted it. That was her mistake. He started where everyone vulnerable starts these days, with a timestamp. He assembled the folder, photographs from the cafes and the galleries, hotel receipts with card imprints and times, text message screenshots he'd found while Melissa left her phone unattended once. He did not hack. She'd set it down and walked into the bathroom, the hotel keycard he'd found in the bottom of her tote and had photographed before returning. He had recordings of conversations that were in public spaces, the raspberry-voiced laugh from the tapas bar, Jordan saying, "He's clueless," outside the bookstore. Nothing recorded behind closed doors. Nothing illegal, but everything damning. He printed copies. Enough for a courtroom, he thought, and enough for small, cruel theater. Then he called Karen and told her he was ready. "You sure?" Karen asked. Her voice carried a caution that had the edge of experience. "Once you start, you can't undo the damage." "I'm sure," he said. He had been sure for a long time. Do it the right way. File for separation. Serve papers. Make it clean but undeniable. She advised him to request temporary measures, a temporary separation order to protect assets, a request to freeze certain joint accounts until a hearing, and to ask for an interim arrangement for the house and cars. She reminded him of the law's indifferent machinery. Evidence could be devastating, but only if presented properly. He did everything Karen recommended. The separation filing was clinical, sterile in its language, a single line on a single form, irreconcilable differences. But with it, he filed a motion for temporary relief, attached a sworn affidavit, and included the folder as exhibits. He watched, oddly calm, as the legal wheels turned and a judge signed an order that put a temporary wall between what had once been his and hers. Melissa came home that night buzzing from a dinner with colleagues, unsettled only by the quietness of the house. He greeted her at the door with a practiced emptiness. "We need to talk," he said. She laughed without humor. "I'm exhausted, Chris. Not now." "You're going to want to sit down," he said. "This won't be quick." Her smile dropped. "What is this about?" He handed her the envelope. She flipped it open carelessly, scanning the paperwork like a client skimming a memo. Then she saw the photographs and the receipts and the hotel registration forms with Jordan's name printed clearly in a machine scan font. Her face drained. She read the affidavit where he had explained in concise, unemotional sentences the timeline she had tried to hide. "Is this some kind of—" she began. "You can't do this." He watched her move through stages he recognized: denial, anger, fear, bargaining. Her voice sharpened. "You're threatening me with paperwork?" she spat. "You'll regret this." He had expected that. "I'm protecting myself," he said. "I told you I'd do what I had to do." She called him cruel, then laughed, then cried, and for an hour the house filled with sounds that once would have felt intimate. He kept his face blank. Inside, however, something had changed. The heat of desire for retribution had cooled into a steadier, colder thing: control. Word spread faster than he anticipated. Melissa's friends, Laura, Trish, the others who had joked at the top of the stairs, were mortified. Some met her in person and gave her chances to explain. Some messaged him politely, asking if there had been a mistake. He let the messages pile up unread. He answered none. Let them sit in their pockets and look foolish. Let them feel the small disorientation of a person learning their friend is not who they thought. He sent the anonymous tip to Rachel, Jordan's girlfriend, and then attached the same packet to her email personally. No anonymity there. He felt a strange prickle waiting for the response. Rachel wrote back within an hour, blunt, cutting, not a single plaintive plea, but the kind of cold fury that fractures people. She thanked him, said she would handle it, and then did something he didn't expect. She confronted Jordan. Jordan's world unraveled quietly and rapidly. Rachel took a printed copy of the hotel receipt to his gym that night and watched him turn white as he read it. She didn't explode in public. She didn't scream or start a scene. She walked out with a small bag of his things and left a voicemail on his phone. "You lied to me," and left it at that. Within 3 days, Jordan's clients had a flurry of cancellations. People did not want someone with obvious personal drama representing their brand. Someone at the gym posted a short, judgmental commentary on community message boards that did not take long to become speculation. Jordan tried to plead, to explain, to salvage what he could. The polite world he'd hustled into closed in like barn doors. One evening, Melissa stood in their kitchen and asked, in the kind of voice that used to soften arguments, "What are you going to do now?" Her eyes looked at him like she could still bargain. He had a list of things he wanted to do: expose her at work, humiliate her less merciful acquaintances, strip advantages until she felt poor and small. But in the space between wanting and doing, something else crept in. Pity. Or maybe the empathy that comes from knowing you've done something human and monstrous at the same time. He'd been angry, but he did not want to watch someone fall into ruin and then step on them as they did. He wanted consequences, not cruelty. "File for separation," he said. "Get a lawyer. Tell the truth to whoever asks." She laughed then, a brittle sound. "You think telling the truth will fix anything? You'll be the one to lose. People will see you as the villain. You'll be lonely." He had expected that too. "Maybe I will be, but I'll be honest." The fallout at Melissa's job was not instantaneous. Her manager was sympathetic at first, a human being dealing with a human mess, asking if she needed time off. But the client presentation suffered. She had to apologize to one important client for missing a crucial meeting because she'd checked into a hotel with a personal trainer and returned exhausted. Email chains leaked. A disgruntled vendor forwarded part of a conversation to a contact at HR. Corporate life is built on the illusion of control. Once that crumbles, the people who owe you favors find reasons to look away. He watched the slow unspooling at a measured distance. They sold the house 2 months into the separation, sold it quickly for less than they had hoped, because the bank had flagged joint accounts and the mortgage company wanted clarity. He moved into a small rental near work. Melissa moved into an apartment close to a yoga studio and a co-op grocery where smiling, quiet women sipped matcha and pretended not to look at the headlines. The settlement hearings were dry and finite. He did not try to take more than he felt he was owed. He took what he needed to be independent, his share of retirement, a small lump sum that would float him for a while, the truck he'd had for 10 years. He insisted on keeping the legal record accessible and factual. He could have pushed for more, public shaming, punitive damages, headlines, but he realized, in those courtroom lights, that vengeance would cost more than he was willing to pay. After the papers were signed, there came a week that felt like a vacuum. The noises of legal systems and phone calls settled into silence. He spent long evenings at home alone, listening to the echo of his own footsteps. The house was officially theirs no longer, but the splinters of its life remained in the boxes he kept in his rented bedroom. A mug she'd painted once at a pottery class, a throw pillow with a stain he'd never scrubbed clean, a stack of mail that he'd kept out of some small private stubbornness. He sorted those boxes and labeled them like a curator of a past life. Then one night he found a note stuck inside an envelope at the bottom of a shoebox. It was in Melissa's handwriting, hurried, the ink smudged at the end. "I'm sorry for breaking us. I thought I was getting what I wanted. I didn't know how hollow it would feel. I'm sorry for hurting you. I'm sorry I lied. I don't expect you to forgive me, but..." And then the ink trailed off. He held it a long time. The note didn't make him forgive her. It didn't fix the months of deception or the way she'd looked at other men across tables. It didn't make Jordan's eyes look ashamed or Rachel's cold voice melt into tenderness. It simply sat there, a small mortal confession. Forgiveness, he found, was not a public thing. It didn't make for the retribution he'd promised himself. It was quiet, private, and deeply unheroic. He thought about the ways they had become people who were too small for one another, a fact that had nothing to do with affairs and everything to do with the slow drift that happens when two lives run parallel long enough to stop intersecting. He could have placed that confession in court as one more exhibit. He could have printed it out, waved it around like a flag, but he folded it back into the envelope and put it in his wallet. Some things were better as memories. Months later, he ran into Melissa at a grocery store. She looked at him, eyes cautious. There were no fireworks, no dramatic interruptions. She said, "How are you?" A small, human question. He considered all the ways to answer, with anger, with the poetry of betrayal, with the blacklist of all their years. Instead, he said simply, "I'm okay." She nodded, relief and contrition flickering across her face like summer clouds. "I'm sorry," she said again. He accepted the apology, not because she deserved it, not because it erased anything, but because it fit in the small place he'd made for himself, a place where things were simple and final. "What will you do now?" she asked. He looked at the rows of produce, the fluorescent light, the plain business of everyday life. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe learn to be my own priority." She smiled sadly. "You deserve that." When she left, he stood under the light in the cereal aisle and felt the emptiness like a kind of freedom. It was not the clean victory he had once imagined. It was not the satisfying collapse of her life onto a stage where he would stand triumphant. It was quieter, an adjustment of the heart toward something smaller and steadier. Months later, when his savings had been rearranged and the lawyer had advised the last signatures, when the dust had genuinely settled, he started going to a small woodworking class on Saturday mornings, something practical, tactile. He liked the precision of measuring, the smell of sawdust, the slow transformation of raw lumber into something useful. Revenge, as it turned out, had been a poor substitute for the labor he now preferred. The work of living cleanly, honestly, and alone required a different kind of patience, the kind that lets you build rather than tear down. It didn't undo the damage. It didn't make the months of silence between them disappear. but it taught him how to be the sort of person who could be trusted, to himself, if to no one else. When he polished the first finished piece of wood in his small apartment, a simple shelf, he felt nothing so dramatic as triumph. He felt something like repair, the slow, steady mending that comes from hands that make, rather than hands that only destroy.